Welcome to another episode of the Modern Facilities Management Podcast, brought to you by FlowPath. I'm your host, Griffin Hamilton. This is the show where I interview industry experts who share their stories, strategies, and insights into modern-day facilities management. From hospitality to commercial real estate and everything in between, we'll learn what it really takes to succeed as a facilities manager. Welcome to another episode of the Modern Facilities Management Podcast. Today, I am pleased to have Lee Hobbs join as the guest. Lee, how you doing this morning?
Doing good. Thanks for having me, Griffin. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. I know we've been going back and forth for quite some time. I'm glad we could finally hit the record button here. Thank you for taking the time to connect here this morning. But why don't you tell the audience a little bit more about who you are and what it is you do?
Yeah, first, I do really appreciate you having me on. It's very humbling to be asked to do this. So, I hope that we can help at least one or two people out with this. So, yeah, my name is Lee Hobbs, regional manager for 3PL, and been doing this for about 3-4 years. I've been in maintenance my whole career. Started out as an electrician, went from electrical all the way up through technician, found my way into, what you refer to as falling into facility management. Kind of a funny story there, a little long-winded, but basically applied for a facilities manager's job on a bet. So that's kind of...
On a bet. Okay, you are going to have to elaborate there. My sporting nature is is interested now.
So I was a technician for another distribution center, and the other technicians that I worked with, they found out that some people had applied for a facility manager role at another distribution center. So, I was, I guess, quote unquote, the lead or automation tech at that time. And so they bet me that I wouldn't put in for it. So I was like, yeah, whatever. So I went ahead and put in for it, sent my resume. Actually, on the resume, I did not put my phone number the first time, and I didn't put my email. So, I thought about it, and talking to my wife, she's like, oh my gosh, what are you going to do? And I said, well, I guess I'll just resend it. Lo and behold, I ended up getting the job. So that's how I fell into facility management. So
I will say a lot of people I talk to kind of fall into facilities management, but you are the first that fell into it on a bet.
I know, it was crazy. I mean, I was lucky, and I will say the director at that time did give me the opportunity to do this. So, Rick Toller, appreciate it.
Yeah. And I mean, everyone does need that, that right opportunity, and things have to fall their way to get that opportunity. And it just so happened yours came from a bet, but I think, there's a good theme there, right? Or a story where, put yourself out there. You never know what's going to happen. And from a hiring standpoint, betting on talent and the person may not always be the exact same bet, but you want to make sure that you are covering everything from the interview process beyond just the resume. Because it sounds like you may or may not have had the actual resume, but they took a chance on you, and here you are.
They did. So, yeah. And that's kind of followed me throughout my career. I think without that opportunity, if I had moved into the position at a later date or something like that I may not have been as in tune with how I like to hire and hire from within and try to find the talent that's already there. So, I've done that quite a few times throughout my career. So I've been really lucky to be able to have that opportunity. So
even after you went from going up through the electrical trade and into facilities management, which are obviously a lot more broad here, you mentioned hiring, so it sounds like you've taken on more responsibilities getting into leadership. Is that right?
Yes. So right now, and it's been the same in the past too. Anything from a greenfield site where I had to hire the entire crew, all the way up through today where I've got a really great team of 5 or 6 facility managers, and then their teams that work for them in each one of the facilities. So, hiring and, the whole hiring process can get pretty overwhelming really quick, considering what we're having to deal with today in the industry with, the lack of skilled people coming into this realm.
Yeah, we're going to touch on that here towards the end of just the future and direction of the industry and what we should be doing to really broaden the horizons of the youth and introducing them to the trades. But we'll touch on that here towards the end, and that's been something that we've talked about offline, but something I'm very passionate about. But main topic or theme here today is really your background and your focus in the industrial space, because we've had people on it in the education space, the hospitality space, in the medical field, but not too many folks on the industrial manufacturing. So, why don't you tell me a little bit more about that component of your job and what you found to be unique about manufacturing distribution?
Yeah, so like I said earlier, I've been in maintenance my entire career. So I did start out on the technician side of things, working on the equipment, turning wrenches, things like that. So really on the industrial side of things, it's manufacturing. Take for instance, it's always peak season. So a lot of 3PLs, a lot of distribution centers, they talk about that peak season. Well, with manufacturing, it's always on. If the machines aren't running and producing, you're not making money. So the thing with that is making sure that you can capture what is needed, work with the operations teams. When you do have something down, you got to hop right on it. There is no, we'll get to it tomorrow. We'll get this schedule, things like that. No, you really got to jump on these things when you do have a breakdown. Hopefully with the things that you have in place, some of the processes, hopefully the good technicians, the PM work order system that you have, hopefully that will help you avoid those breakdowns. But when you do have those breakdowns, you got to get right on it. So that's probably the biggest difference that I can explain between the industrial side of things and maybe more of the hospitality. I know with the restaurant business, that's probably a little similar. If you have an oven or fryer or something go down, that's lost revenue, and you don't want to do that. So, but for me, the being in maintenance my whole career, it's one of those. Uh, I've been lucky to see a lot of different things. I've also been able to be in the sales side, so I've been on both sides of the desk. So I kind of understand what it takes to not only run a facility, but what it takes to uh, give give the facility what they need from a vendor standpoint. Um,
Sure.
so
Yeah, and something that I mean, just to dive deeper there, I mean, there is a direct impact on the equipment staying working at peak efficiency, on the revenue being brought in. There's companies out there where it's every second that manufacturing line is down, it's X amount of dollars. And even with a restaurant, right, you can get by and go through a shift and not necessarily lose too much revenue. The customer experience may be impacted there, but with a DC where you are really going through and it is every second matters, there is a direct correlation there. It's not the indirect cost. And so I think that is what, in my mind, would be the most unique piece of it, and also a lot of pressure on the facilities department to make sure everything is up and running at all times.
yeah, true. So profit margin, that's huge. So the profit margin for say um, somebody that's bottling, canning soft drinks, the margins there are very small. So yes, they are looking for the milliseconds and seconds that they can save throughout the day, because when you're producing, a million plus bottles of soft drink per year, all those little seconds, they really do matter. In the distribution world or 3PL e-commerce, same thing. During peak season, you've got to get those numbers out. UPH, from anything from your UPH, all the way through to how well you're shipping, your sortation, inbound, outbound. It's all got to be a well-oiled machine, and it has to work flawlessly for that, because in e-commerce, most of the time it's that 2 to 3 week window where these companies are making the majority of their money. So they've got to work flawlessly. They got to work with their clients to make sure that we're meeting the client's needs, and things like that. So there's a lot to making ends meet from year to year.
Yeah,
And we
and
play a big part of that in maintenance because we have to make sure that these things are captured before peak because a lot of what we do at the company that I work for now is we do a lot of pre-peak planning. So we do a lot of major PMs. We do a lot of work ahead of time to make sure that we have everything captured, that we're finding anything criticality, making sure we have our critical spares, making sure that we've captured some of the big things that we've seen in the past, things like that. So,
yeah, and I think going back into just the seconds that matter, I think it's something where as you compound those little things over the course of the year or 5 years or 10 years, right? Like they add up to significant dollars. And I read a story about Southwest, which currently they're not viewed in a very positive light right now, but they have been for decades the case study of how to properly grow a business and such it's a great business case there. And I read the one of the reasons why they grew so quickly and so effectively was that they were able to reduce the turn of the planes so they could take off and have more planes going out with a smaller fleet. And they were going down to the second. And so, same with manufacturing, right? Like those little things, those incremental improvements, they make a big difference over time. And I think that goes into what you're talking about of process standardization and capturing the data points that will tell you the story on where you could be more efficient. I think that's something that you've mentioned before that you're really passionate about.
yeah, go back to that point. One little hiccup can make a huge difference. And I think that's why we've got. So for me, I went through some courses with SMRP. So I was a CMRP there for about 3 or 4 years. I was certified. So going through that really helped me understand the bigger picture of having those processes, the standardization, and the data that you can actually pull from not only the machines, but from the efforts of your operations teams and figure out where those roadblocks are. Because to Southwest's, that one little hiccup can have a huge ramification across your entire network, whether it's one building, two buildings, or if you've got buildings all across the nation. So one thing that I have seen in the past was really big on standardization. So if you can standardize across either a network or part of a network, whether you got one building or multiple buildings, it will help you capture that data. And it can be anything from standardizing on lockout tagout, the way you create your PMs. If you've got multiple facilities and you've got multiple types of PMs, or if you've got, say, you're using a spreadsheet in facility A and a Word document in facility B, if you ever get to the point where you want to cross train some technicians, it's going to be very difficult because they're used to different ways of going to maintenance. So, there's a lot of really good books, a lot of good information out there on standardization, and I'll definitely shoot everybody to Jeff Shiver, Ricky Smith, some of those guys that are really big into these processes and standardizations and data. Once you get all that data in, once you start capturing that data, it's not really helpful at first because you're trying to gather all that data. But once you start gathering that data, you can start pinpointing some of the issues and some of the future needs that you're going to need for capturing that stuff.
And so it sounds to me, the way I'm interpreting this is the end goal being to standardize, to make the reason for that is to make training and production as efficient as possible. And so with that being the end goal, you're saying that one of the first steps is to start with capturing data.
So, yes. So that for me, there's a couple of different ways that I go about that. It's really no good to capture the data if you don't have the ability to capture the correct data. One of those that I feel strongly about is a really good CMMS. So, such as FlowPath. If you've got that and you can get that implemented correctly and you can get the buy-in, that's probably one of the quickest, best ways to start capturing data. Again, you got to have that standardization. You got to have those processes, because I don't care which CMMS you put in. If you don't implement it correctly and you don't get the buy-in, it's really not going to work. So that's where we as facility managers come in. We've not only got to help our technicians and facility managers and things like that understand the need for that, but we've also got to lead up to the executive level to make sure that they understand, hey, this is something that we really need. We have to get this implemented, and we need your help with the buy-in to make sure that we don't say 3 months down the road, well, we don't see anything, so we're just going to scrap it. This is a long-term goal that we have. So typically with maintenance, so when you're starting out as a completely reactive maintenance department, it's typically anywhere from 3, 7, 10 years before you're really going to reach that best-in-class, world-class maintenance capabilities. So it's a long-term investment, but every day that you're in that, you're getting a little bit better because you're capturing more data and you're able to go back through the years and say, okay, bearing A goes bad every 6 months. Okay. So every 5 months, we're just going to go ahead and change that bearing. Every 1 year, we've got this motor that goes bad. So now let's figure out, okay, this motor, is it critical? Do we just run it to fail, or do we, go ahead and change it before it fails? So that, there's all of that data is captured. So you're just taking those best practices and putting them in place. And again, that goes along with standardization across all the network.
Yeah, and continuing on that theme, and what are some other things that, because it's very difficult to simplify this whole process of standardizing, right? What are some other recommendations beyond just accepting the need and the importance of data? What are the next steps of one that one can take?
So it's it's a little difficult to.
It's tough because you're mentioning a multi-year process of standardizing what you're doing. I'm thinking more of someone that is coming into a new organization, no data being collected, and no standardized way of operating. I know the first step is probably take a deep breath. You're going to survive, but after you get your bearings, you accept that you need data. You're going to start capturing that. What are some other best practices there?
So I can kind of relate that to my current role. So when I came in, we were really reactive. There were some areas that I'm kind of a clean freak. So, one of the things that the team that I work with understands now is if there is something that's a little bit uneven, I'm going to make them go back and redo it. So it's some of the small things like that. But on a bigger picture, when I first came in, so I sat the entire crew down when I came in, explained my background, some of the things that I would like to see, maybe not expectations, but more goal oriented. And one of those was just cleanup. We had a real, in the facilities here where I live, and my kind of home facilities. So they had, I guess, a hoarding problem. It was a lot of stuff that we didn't need. And so these buildings that we operate in, they were old manufacturing buildings. So there was a lot of stuff left over from some of that. So when I first came in, I had the goal of cleaning up all the maintenance shops. There's 4 facilities here in this area that we operate. So when I sat down with the guys, I gave them a goal of, hey, in 2 years, 2.5 years, you're going to come to me and you're going to say, hey, we're running out of stuff to do. What's next? So I had that happen with one of the kind of the lead guys that is kind of, he came with the building, basically. So, that was one of the big things that I was looking for. And when he said that, it really made me understand and know that we had hit one of those big goals that I had. So now you can actually walk into the shops, find what you need. We're not an overabundance of parts and supplies that we don't need, things like that. So that is one way that you can start out getting those things captured, because if you don't have a clean area, no amount of work that you're going to do is going to help you in that area.
Love that, and especially coming from someone that may have a slight hoarding problem, that I might need to take that home myself. But so you've mentioned before different technologies, and again going back into data, and that being something that unfortunately not everybody has the luxury of having the tech stack. I'll rephrase that. Nobody has the tech stack that they actually want. They may have components here and there, but something that I think is important to recognize and accept really is the fact that you are going to have to be resourceful, under resourced and undermanned. So what can you do to make the most of what you do have?
So depending on what it is that you do or don't have. So resources, take for instance. So we don't really have a true CMMS yet. So what we have done is, when I first came in, they had a bunch of Excel spreadsheets. Didn't really work. There was no way to really capture. It was print, and they would sign off and do their check the box. So that didn't really work for me. It was way too intensive to try to capture that data and do it the right way. So we've switched to a different type platform to where we can actually give the technicians the ability to do some things on their phones and on the computers electronically. Now, it's still not what I want. It's basically a stopgap. So we have been able to utilize that system to kind of quasi build kind of a homemade work order system. Definitely not what I want. Definitely not what I need for the future. But those types of things, just think outside the box. Just because you don't have the tools or the resources that you really need, find something that works. And there's always the capability of finding someone or something that can help you build that out. It may not necessarily be you. It could be, say, a super user or a computer guru, or if you can just find someone, maybe a consultant or somebody that can come in and say, hey, what resources do you have? What can we do to help you capture that? Even some of the systems that you have in house. We've got a warehouse execution system that we utilize. We can capture data in there. It's things like that you really have to process and think about, and just make sure that you're getting what you can.
Yeah, and I think one of the points you made is not the things, but the who, the people behind that as well. And I think that's what's really interesting about the facilities community is that this is about manufacturing distribution, but someone listening that is in hospitality or the medical field, there's takeaways there, and there's someone out there shaking their head, be like, I've had to deal with that problem before. And so the people in the community, I think, is something that I've personally experienced this, where just sharing best practices and building out that network is such a key piece of being a professional facilities manager. And I think that's a good segue here into the future of the industry and the importance of building out that network, especially at the the next generation. So talk to me there. What do you think about as far as the future of the industry and where we're going here?
Technology is just growing by leaps and bounds. There's some innovations. There's some things out there now that basically tell you what's wrong with the system. It doesn't get down to some of the wiring and things like that, but technology is key, and I think that plays very well with this next generation of technicians and facility managers that are coming up, because they're really used to the technology. So as long as we keep utilizing the technology and keep utilizing that that base that is coming up now with this new generation, I think we'll see a lot of good leaps and bounds through implementations and even newer technologies than what we're seeing today. I can talk about just a couple other things. Vibration monitoring, thermal imaging, things like that. Those are some really great ways of capturing some of that. So that's technology that some of it's been used for a while, but it's getting better and better. So, just as long as we're engaging that younger generation and utilizing, social media, that's another way that we can share ideas and do some things that will help grow the industry.
Yeah, and I think tying that together, right, of the next generation and technology, the faster we as an industry just accept the fact that technology is here and it is for the better, I think we could start reframing the industry as a yes, it's still the trades, which is extremely important. You need to know how to use your hands. That is, one of the main requirements in facilities management. But it's also a technology career, right? Because you mentioned a handful of technologies, but you need to be familiar with Excel spreadsheets, running reports, capturing data in different technologies, using and leveraging these different sensors like IoT sensors to better run your facility. And I think that's something where the more we talk about that and how reliant on technology we are, I think the more people are going to take a second glance at the industry and not just look at it as just the trades, right?
Yeah, so it's that stigma that we all talk about, the trades. Okay, facilities. Okay, I'm gonna be plumbing a toilet, or I'm just gonna be cleaning up some stuff. I don't want to get greasy all the time. That's not the truth about what we see and do every day. Yeah, you're gonna get your hands dirty. Yeah, you're gonna bust a knuckle every now and then in the trades, but that's just part of it. So we've got to help everybody understand that the stigma of the trades is old. It's not one of those things where, okay, so high schooler XYZ, doesn't really have a career path, so let's just throw him in the trades. Nowadays, I mean, you got to think about it. We've got people coming into the trades that are making more than 4-year degree personnel. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with getting a 4-year degree. Just there's still a lot of people out there that do not want to go into the bachelor's, or going to get into the engineering, things like that. So a good way to get into these areas are through the trade schools. I'll give you an example. Within an hour of me, I've got 3 community colleges that have amazing trade schools. So, anything from industrial automation to mechatronics, HVAC, welding. So, there's all kinds of ways to get into the trades. And now that we're seeing some of this other stuff from, say, IFMA and some of these other organizations, they're really pushing this facility management. So now you don't have to go into engineering to get that 4-year bachelor's degree. You can actually go into facility management now, which is amazing. I love that we have those capabilities now. It's been far too long that we've been waiting on these things, and I'm just so glad to see some of these organizations really pushing the facility management aspect of what we do, because it does go across industries. Like you said earlier, hospitality, medical, industrial, the manufacturing, the distribution. It's all part of that facility maintenance management mindset.
Absolutely. And I think that's where I get excited, because hopefully it's not too late, but it is now becoming a more common degree and a more common field to start pursuing. And on your point of people not necessarily wanting to go into the 4-year degree and then making the immediate salary they're making probably isn't adding up to that of someone in the trades or in facilities management. I could guarantee that there's going to be more of a need for facilities management as half the field retires in the next 5 years, as most 4-year degrees out there. And as a product of someone who went in and got a 4-year degree, it wasn't making 6 figures right out of college, nowhere close to it. So that is something where getting into the trades, I mean, you have the apprenticeship where you're getting paid, you don't have student loans, and after 4 years of real world experience, as opposed to 4 years of a degree, you're now mid-level, right? So, I mean, I preach this all the time, but if you don't go that route, at least give it a serious look and evaluation before you just go with, what everyone else is doing in the world out there.
Yeah. So like me, as we've discussed in the past, I started out in accounting. Oh my gosh, I hated it. I mean, nothing against accountants, but I'm just not that person. And I spent a year with that degree program. So thank goodness my guidance counselor in college pointed me to this part of it, because it was like a match made in heaven. I really enjoy it, and I've never thought about doing anything else except for maintenance. Whether it's turning a wrench or creating a spreadsheet or building and implementing a CMMS across a major network. So it's just what I love doing, and there's really, for me, the satisfaction of knowing that I was able to just fix something and make things better. That's my goal. I always want to try to fix the things that are wrong and make things better for everybody, not only my teams, but the operations teams, even down to our vendors. If there's something we can work on and help make things better, then that's our goal.
Yeah, and you mentioned your guidance counselor, and that's a good segue here because I ask everybody this, but who or what has had the biggest impact on you and your career?
So yeah, there's a couple of people. Definitely Cheryl, my guidance counselor in college. She did an amazing job. She helped me through that entire process. She talked to me. She went through this whole process. Again, there's the process of asking me questions and figuring out what I was good at and what I really like doing. So Cheryl for sure. Second would be my college instructor, Lane Hubbard. He really kind of, I felt sometimes like I was the only kid in class, and it just made that so much better. And then, of course, Rick Toller for giving me the first opportunity to get in that facility maintenance area. There's a whole list of people that I could go on and on and on about. Both the ones that I learned the good points from, and the ones that I learned what I didn't like. So that it helps to have both of those.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Lee, certainly appreciate you coming on. This has been an absolute pleasure. I'll obviously stay in touch, and I appreciate you coming on, sharing your passion of facilities management here. I'll put in the show notes a link to your LinkedIn and a few other items that we've talked about. But once again, thank you for coming on, and be good, sir.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate it, Griffin. Have a good day.
You as well. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Modern Facilities Management Podcast. Make sure to subscribe for future episodes and follow us on LinkedIn for more facilities management content.